Welcome back as I struggle to decide what to do for the best. I am sat at home deciding whether to pack for a trip to Wales or a stay in hospital. If you like what I'm doing, then it would be great if you could like, comment, subscribe and share with anyone you think may find this interesting. Also, if you ring the bell, you'll get notifications when I upload my next video. I really do feel like giving up on sleep. I sat in bed most of the night with my mind going backwards and forwards. Do I take a risk and go to Wales? Or do I do the sensible thing? Risky, sensible. Risky, sensible. Wales is still going to be there. Bryn Celli Du, I hope I've said that right, is 5,000 years old and isn't going anywhere. But unless I sort out myself, then I might not be here in 5 months, let alone 5 years. And I really do want to go back there. I was such an idiot last year that I want to go back. I can't be a prisoner in my own home, too scared to do anything or go anywhere. So I spoke to the hospital and they told me to go back to A&E where I'd have to be processed again from scratch. Then I phoned Jules and told him. I was gutted, but he understands. He more than anyone understands. So I packed my bag again, but with more crafting, internet, but sadly no walking boots. It was weird. I knew I was going in, but I didn't know how long I was going to be there for. Would it be an overnight stay? Would it be a couple of days? I just didn't know. I mean, how many pairs of knickers did I need to pack? The best way I can describe the feeling was how I felt preparing for lockdown at the start of COVID. I was trying to work out then what I would need to take and for how long, but like everybody else in the country, I didn't know how long lockdown was going to be or how long it'd be away for. I hated being sensible then, and I hated being sensible now. I packed my big girl pants. Don't worry, I'm not going to show you my pants. Nobody wants to see my pants. And headed back to the hospital, which is not where I wanted to be going. To make matters worse, when you go to Wales, you have to go past the hospital, so it would have been very easy to say, no, taxi driver, carry on driving, I'm not going to be sensible. But that wouldn't have been very sensible now, would it? It was pretty full in A&E and I had to wait some time to be seen. Eventually they took me in and I was seen, and then the process started. They took some blood from me and they did an ECG, which was, I'm pleased to say, normal. Later in the afternoon they did another ECG. At about 4:30 I spoke to the cardiac nurse and told her that I was there and waiting, and she told me that she would see me in the morning and escalate the scan, but that there was nothing to worry about, that I was in the right place now and that I could relax. And still I waited. Luckily, one of the things I had packed was a book. I'd started to read a book called The Longest Crawl, which is about a long pub crawl around the UK, and is written by a guy called Ian Merchant. I've read a few of his books and can highly recommend him. They gave me more meds and aspirin, and the doctor told me that they were going to keep me in. They took more blood from me at about 9:30. I'll be honest, my arms were beginning to resemble pin cushions, and it looked like somebody had beaten me up with the amount of bruising that was starting to appear. I was really hungry and asked if I could go and get some food, but they said I couldn't leave the department. So I asked if someone could get me some food. I'm not the best person to be around when I'm hungry. So I waited and I waited. Eventually they did bring some sandwiches, not just for me, but for the rest of the people around. And as hungry as I was, I did decline the chocolate. Really didn't want to go back down that route. Then they told me that transport would be arriving. Transport? Why do I need transport? Where am I going? Because they'd found a bed for me in the next town. What? So I wasn't even going to be local? Oh no. The tears that had been threatening to come decided to then gush out, and I got all a bit messy. Yeah, I didn't want to. This is not what I said I'd be doing. I didn't want to go anywhere else. It was bad enough being in a hospital. They told me that the transport would be arriving around midnight, so a bit longer to wait. They gave me a blood thinning injection, this time in my stomach. So giving up on my arm and starting to bruise my stomach. Wow, lucky me. Midnight came and went, and eventually we left, and I got to the hospital, the next one, at 2 a.m. They asked me lots of questions about how I was feeling, my meds, what had happened over the past week, because they'd left my notes at the other hospital, so that really didn't help. And I was tired and hungry. I didn't know what I wanted more, food or sleep. A cup of tea and sleep one. Forget food, food can wait. I quickly dropped off, but they woke me an hour later to ask more questions. I know they're doing their job, but surely they can wait just a little bit. I woke up, and this was not the solstice that I had planned to be spending. Didn't help that it was gloriously sunny, did it? I'd managed 2 hours sleep according to my Fitbit app, which isn't great, even with my ear defenders on. There was a nurse who kept asking me the same question over and over again. And she had a mask on, but it was hanging underneath her chin, so what was the point of that? I wasn't about to tell her I was fine when I wasn't, but I wasn't about to be rude to her and tell her to wear a blinking mask properly. If I was fine, I'd be in a camper van watching the sun over the Irish Sea with a gin and tonic, not sat in a hospital bed. Instead, I waited for the doctor to do his rounds and amused myself by looking at social media. Everyone was looking so lovely as they celebrated the solstice, but I couldn't let the side down, so I got out my lippy and put a bit on, and then I got my headdress and put some native flowers in my hair. Just because I was ill didn't mean I was going to let the side down, now was it? The lady in the next bed was having the same as me, so I eavesdropped while the consultant spoke to her. After all, his list might be full, so he might not even see me. But he came round to my bed, looked at me with my flowers in. It's really a mask, you know. absolutely terrified inside. Anyway, he gave me two options. I could have the angiogram, which is invasive, and only might, be done this week, or they could discharge me and I would have to wait for a CT scan at my local hospital, which put me back to square one. Listen, I'd given up going to Anglesey to stop the worry, so it wasn't really much of an option, was it? I'm still scared. He told me to decide what they were going to do, but he walked off before I could ask him any questions. On a positive, they weighed me, and I was 1.5 kilos lighter than I'd been the week before. 9 kilos in 2 months was pretty good going by my books. Well, by anybody's books, really. So now I just needed to get moving and doing some form of gentle exercise. Then it would come off. This is what had happened before. The cardiac nurse came and cleared a few things up that had been bothering me. But I didn't like the sound of the invasive thing. There were 2 other women having the same angiogram this week, so I was going to see how they got on first. I know everybody complains about hospital food, but actually it wasn't too bad. The only thing, well, not the only thing, but one of the things, was they did keep giving me little packets of salt. Now I know salt isn't good for you, so I made the decision that while I was in hospital, I was going to throw it away, or rather decline it rather than throwing stuff pointlessly away. If I was going to give up something, the hospital seemed to be the right place to do it. A nurse came and stabbed me in the stomach with a blood thinner. Sorry, I mean she gently gave me an injection. As tired as I was, I tried not to sleep, so that I would sleep well when the lights went out. Well, that was a crappy night's sleep. It was a double headphone night, earplugs and ear defenders. But despite this, I was still waking up every hour. Sleep was not going to be my friend, was it? At 3 AM I asked one of the nurses if they got something that could help me sleep, but I was told that I'd have to wait and speak to the doctor. So that wasn't going to happen. Not this night, anyway. I did manage to fall into a sleep. Then they woke me to do my ups. I was not polite to them, I have to say. I know they're only doing their job, but I wanted to sleep. I spoke to the 2 ladies who'd had their angiogram the previous day. One was fine and said it was easy, but the other one had a dreadful time, and they'd had to do it in her groin, and she was in agony. Oh dear Lord, that did not bode well. I should explain what an angiogram is so you can understand my concerns. They make a small incision in your wrist and they push a thin tube through your artery and up to your heart. Once it's in place, a dye passes through that highlights any blockages. A number of images are taken so that the consultants can look at this in more detail. If there are blockages, then they insert a balloon type thing called a stent that keeps the arteries open. That is unfortunately not done in this county, so would mean another hospital transfer. There is a lady on the ward who's been waiting over a week for a transfer. I didn't like the sound of that. When you are lying in bed and they talk about the camera going inside you, your brain automatically thinks of a big camera, even though logic says the camera is going to be small. So your brain really does do weird things to you at times. Of course, with the lady in the next bed to me being in agony, I focused on her, not the lady that was all happy and had an easy time. The doctor came round and asked me bluntly what I wanted to do. It was either the angiogram or go home. I asked him what the risks were, and he said, and I quote, "You're quite fat, so they're quite high." Charming. I wouldn't have minded, but he wasn't exactly a small man himself. But I smiled sweetly and didn't say anything. After all, he might be the man that was cutting this incision in my wrist, or worse, my groin. So I wasn't going to annoy him. I went to the loo, and there was a knock on the door from the nurse to ask, saying that the doctor wanted an answer. Without any further details, I said yes, let's just get it out of the way. Let's get on with it. When I'd spoken to Jules the night before about the options, he'd said to think of my body as a car and my heart was the engine. And I was just going in for an MOT. Makes sense, doesn't it? And he says that I'm the wise one. So she told me to get out of the loo and get ready. What do you mean, get ready now? I didn't think you could fit me in. So I psyched myself up. Lots of deep breathing. I got some essential oils and was breathing that in just to keep calm. I was ready. I could do this. Just as they were about to put the cannula in, another nurse came and told me it was off. What do you mean, off? Join me in my next instalment when I find out what the heck is going on.